Hello, Ruby here. If you are new to this channel, I'm an astrologer, tarot reader, psychic, and witch. So if you vibe with those things, feel free to give this channel a subscribe. You'll probably like it here. Today we're going to be talking about book, and I also have a few oracle deck recommendations for working with the goddess Hecate. This was a viewer request. This is a great video if you are feeling called to work with Hecate, but you don't know where to start. I have one of my Hecate statues here chilling with me. We're gonna just jump right in today. So an amazing resource for working with Hecate and Hecatean magic is Cindy Brannon. Cindy Brannon. She has 3 books that are themed around Hecatean magic, working with the goddess Hecate. The first is Keeping Her Keys, Hecate's Modern Witchcraft. This is an amazing book if you are starting a pagan path, you are interested in becoming a witch, practicing witchcraft, but you've never done it before, and you also feel drawn to Hecate. This is more in the realm of beginner magic. So there's meditations in this book that will help you connect in magically, connect into yourself, connect you in to the tree of life, things like that. It's more of a beginner witchcraft approach, but if you are a seasoned practitioner and you are just curious on implementing working with Hecate and devotional work to Hecate into your practice, this book is great as well. So it's definitely good for beginners. And if you're a seasoned practitioner, there's just a lot of good things to glean from this, but you might find yourself skimming over some of the beginning stuff. This is a book that you can work with over the course of a year if you want to devote a year of your practice to working with Hecate. And I love this book. I have a lot of things underlined. As you can see, I revisit this book often. I was working with this book a lot at the beginning of the year, doing a lot of work with Hecate that was really instrumental to the development of my personal practice as a witch and practitioner. And I'm going to be revisiting this book as I devote my practice to Hecate through the months of October and November. I'm really feeling pulled to work with Hecate again. Whenever I work with Hecate, there's a lot of growth and personal development that happens for me personally and magically as a practitioner. So great jumping off point if you're new to Hecate, new to witchcraft, or are just looking for something to inspire you and are curious about what a more devotional practice looks like. Okay, so the next one is Entering Hecate's Garden. This is Cindy Brannon's book on herbal magic. Now, little story time. This was the first book I picked up from Cindy Brannon. Before I had this book, before I was really working with Hecate, I always felt really drawn to her, but I'm talking actual deep work. Okay, I read the introduction of this book, which is a feminist retelling of Circe and Medea, and I hated it. I hated it so much, and I was this author, I cannot, okay? So after I gave Cindy Brannon another chance, got this book, really started vibing with her, I picked this book back up. There's good stuff in this book, but because of my personal experience, I wouldn't start here. When we're working with Hecate, if we are called to work with her, she is our patron or one of our main deities, we're going to be working with herbalism and herbal magic. I'm sure there's exceptions to the rule, but it is one of the areas of the practice that Hecate governs and guides over. So this is a great book to have in your collection. There's good information in here, correspondences in here. I will say I've heard some herbalists relay that some of the ways that Cindy Brennan works with baneful plants, poisonous plants, isn't recommended. So before like doing any of the baneful workings or recipes in this book, I would just cross-reference for yourself, okay? And that's wise regardless. Like, if you're working with baneful magic, do a lot of research. If you're working with baneful or poisonous plants, before you just do the spell, empower yourself, okay? So Cindy Brennan's last book, Entering Hecate's Cave. This is like a shadow work focused book. This is about cord cutting, soul retrieval. This is probably, I think, like the most profound. I'm not quite sure the word I'm looking for, but out of all three of these books, like I think this has the most meat. I find it to be the most compelling. I love this book. So if you can only get 2 books out of everything, like all of the books I'm recommending to you, and you're just starting out, I think these 2. I really enjoy this. I'm going to be revisiting this when I do my work with Hekate, like October and November. If you are like walking through a dark night of the soul, this would be a wonderful book to pick up, okay? And you don't even really need to be like, oh, I want to be a practicing witch to get stuff out of this book. If you're just like a person on a healing journey, this is going to be a good, helpful, clear, poignant resource for you, okay? 2 other books. Hekate by Courtney Weber, a friend and fellow witch who I very much admire, powerful witch, recommended this to me. I got it on Audible and liked it so much I purchased the physical copy as well. This is another great like resource if you're just beginning a devotional path to Hekate. This book is going to give you her myths, her stories, a lot of her historical background, and then also give you like invocations, spells, just like concrete, practical ways that you can start working with the goddess in your practice. I really enjoy this book. I think it's like only $14-15 on Amazon. So this is a good one. Very easy read, easy listen on Audible. And then the last book I'm going to recommend you, I only have on Kindle. So I have to look on my Kindle and see the names of the authors. I believe it's called Hecate Liminal Rites. Hecate Liminal Rites by Solita Deste and David Rainkins. Hecate Liminal Rites is the name of that. I'm going to put all of these books in my Amazon storefront. I just got one of those. And then I'll put the link in the info for this video if I remember. That way you can just click and like see everything. Everything I'm mentioning should be on Amazon. Okay. So Hekate Liminal Rites does not have any spell work in it. As far as I don't know if I've read this one cover to cover. It's been a minute. But from what I remember, it is mostly just like about Hekate, how she was worshipped, her, historically looking into the hymns and the rites of Hekate. I like this book because it paints a really clear picture. Hekate can be like put in little boxes, like, oh, she's the goddess of the underworld. Oh, she's the goddess of of magic. She's a dark goddess. But Hekate is as like a multi-layered as a goddess like Isis, who we call she of 1,000 names. And Hekate was like worshipped and revered pre-Greek, even though she's often ascribed as a Greek goddess. And so if you work with her, it's like, I think it's really important to educate yourself so you can work with her as deeply as possible. And it helped me understand why I was drawn into working with Hekate, because I don't normally work with the Greek pantheon. The other goddesses I work with are Mary Magdalene and Isis, primarily. And then I work with goddesses from the Hindu pantheon, including Kali. So I don't have a strong, connection to the Greek pantheon, but I've always felt a strong connection to Hecate and hesitated to really connect in until a few years ago. Like, actually, when I got this tattoo, I was like, I wanted it to be a priestess of Hecate tattoo. But I got this tattoo before I was really working deeply with the goddess, because I was like, is this me? Like, I don't really connect in with Greek stuff. But she was worshipped pre-Greek. Cindy Brennan describes Hecate as the anima mundi, the soul of the world. And I'm going on a little tangent, but if you're curious about Hecate, if you're curious about working with this deity, everything I'm saying is going to be helpful for you. I'm a professional tarot reader, and sometimes people will come in to get readings for me, when they're really coming in is because they're being initiated by a goddess and they don't know it and I don't know it, and then they come in and it happens. And a lot of times when I'm connecting in with somebody, I'm like, you are connected into Hecate or Santa Muerte. And they'll either be like, oh, it's Hecate, or oh, it's Santa Muerte. And I'm not saying those two goddesses are the same. And especially if we're doing like devotional practice of Santa Muerte, like we don't mix. Like, it's Santa Muerte. We're not calling Santa Muerte other things. It's really important that we educate ourselves on the traditions of the goddess that we're working with, so that we can like really honor them through our devotional practice. Hecate, way more open. Like, I think with Hecate, like, research yourself and then, like, do what you're feeling called to. With Santa Muerte, there's more of a living tradition, okay? That's a little more closed. And so, like, I'm not saying Hecate and Santa Muerte are the same, but when I'm doing readings for people, their energies feel so similar that it's like sometimes their feeling tones are coming through in the same way. And so like Hecate is also, both of these goddesses really rule the death and rebirth process. And there's a loving energy to both of them, okay? So sometimes if you feel drawn to one, there might be a connection with the other, or they just show up in similar ways, okay? Not the same goddess. That's not what I'm saying. Okay, so those are the books on Santa Muerte. Now I'm going to talk about some decks you can use to connect with her. The Magical Botanical Oracle by Maxine Miller and Christopher Penczak is an amazing place to start. It has a beautiful guidebook. The backings are so cool. And this deck is an oracle deck that features herbalism, which is one of the facets of the craft that Hecate rules over. There is a representation of baneful plants, poisonous plants in this deck, which Hecate has a connection with. And I believe there is even a depiction of Hecate in this deck. So let me see if I can find it. The artwork in this deck is beautiful. And this is a deck that you're really going to want to spend some time with. This isn't just like a oracle card you use to like clarify tarot, or just like a pull and look and get your message. This is one where you're really going to want to spend time with the guidebook, okay? This was the card I was looking at, or looking for. So that is the Magical Botanical Oracle by Maxine Miller and Christopher Penczak. I always recommend starting a journal if you are beginning deity work that like just has all of your messages from the deity, like all of your findings from that deity. Like my journal for my work with Hecate, like has all her like epithets, you know, like Hecate Cleidolicus, Hecate Trimorphus, like what they all mean. So when I'm like wanting to recite incantations for Hecate, I can just like whatever aspect of a goddess I'm calling in, it's all in the journal. So if you have a journal like that, you know, you can have a deck that you pair with it where you're receiving messages from the goddess. The next deck on my list for decks that you can use to work with Hecate is the Oracle of the Witch by Flavia Kate Peters and Barbara Michael Jeanfrey. Maybe. This is published by Herbal. This deck is a deck for witches. It's a deck for those who are interested in reclaiming their power or embarking on a path of the witch. And that is one of the ways I have connected in with Hecate. Hecate has really taught me to connect in with my personal power and to use ritual and magic as a way to own my power. And there is a representation of Hecate in this deck. And so if you are, working with Hecate as a form of personal empowerment and as a way to hone your craft, then this is the perfect deck to work with. This is the deck that I'm personally using right now to work with Hecate. This is also a deck that's going to show up on my Decks for Samhain list. Let me see if I can find the Hecate card. All right. It's funny because I pulled the Hecate card from this deck this morning, and that's how I knew it was time to make this video. But now, here we go. Now it was eluding me for a minute. That is the Hecate card from this deck. The last deck on my list. These are just some ones I pulled today. These are by no means the extensive list, the only decks you can use to work with Hecate. This is just what I have that I felt intuitively pulled to share with you. The Lantern Oracle by Angelina Mirabito. This is an amazing shadow work deck. Hecate is associated with the torchbearer, the light shower, the illuminator of our path. We can call on Hecate to light our path for us. And part of that is seeing ourselves really clearly. And you cannot work with Hecate and not do shadow work. She is not going to let you do that. I will say this, I love working with Hecate. She is one of my main deities at this point, and I feel like I've just begun my relationship with her, even though I've been working with her for a minute now. There's still so much farther for me to go, farther for me to walk with this goddess. And more than any other goddess I've worked with, she has shown up for me. And that when I do devotional work and pray to Hecate, she has transformed my life in real world ways. And I'm more in my power than I have ever been. And there's so much more for me to go. But that has come with a lot of shadow work, a lot of looking at things I would rather have not looked at, being honest. Okay. And so, if you're only interested in love and light, do not work with this goddess, because she's going to show you yourself to empower you. She's not going to let you stay in disempowering patterns. Not at all. Not at all. So this is a deck to work with if you are in that phase of walking with this goddess where you are doing your shadow work. And even though this is a shadow work deck, I find it to be a very compassionate and kind deck, okay? I also use this deck for past life work with my clients. And I do find that an aspect of working with Hecate is reclaiming our power and our gifts from past lives, especially our past lives as powerful women, okay? So I would encourage you to work with the guidebook and to journal with this deck. If you can only get one deck from this list, I love all of these decks. This is going to be the most versatile. And I feel like this is the most universal. You can use this for past life work. You can use this as a clarifier for your tarot draws. I use this deck for client readings. I use this deck for my own personal work. I use it with the guidebook, but sometimes I won't use the guidebook now that I'm familiar with the deck. and what each card is really saying. So that is the Lantern Oracle by Angelina Mirabito. And that's all I have for you today, okay? If you can only get one book, get Keeping Your Keys, because that's going to give you everything you need for like a magical practice. So if you're brand new to working with Hekate, brand new to deity work, or a magical practice, you don't know where to start, I refer my beginner witches to that book all of the time, okay? So that's all for today. As always, I am sending you love, wishing you well. Blessed full moon. We have a full moon coming up, and I will see you soon.